Great, thanks. Welcome everyone to our regular monthly Trainers Consortium call. We are today going to talk about some ventilation stuff, and if there's extra time, we'll brainstorm the year ahead and what all we want to be talking about. Caleb, John Jones said he's muted and can't get off mute, so not a huge...
Got it, I'll sort it.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, so ventilation is our main topic, but before then we'll have our regular network updates. Jonathan Ballou, I saw you on here. I'm going to make sure I can unmute you. Present and accounted for. Why don't you go first with the updates from NASCASP, and then I'll go through the rest of our regular network partners.
I would be happy to. Thank you, Kelly. This will be somewhat brief today, but still heartfelt. NASCASP, we have dates for our winter conference. This will be virtual. We're sort of planning on having our September conference in person, but we'll see how that goes. But this one, February 28th through March 3rd, will be virtual. And we did welcome a new program manager for the CSBG program, Lauren Johnson. Not that that affects too many people here, but just thought you might like to know. We're also doing some outreach to get more materials for the member portal on our website, in particular state planning documents, TNTA plans, health and safety plans, that type of thing. So if we've reached out to you and you can supply those to us, we would appreciate it. There was a continuing resolution signed, and that will fund the government through February 18th. So at least for the near term, the government will be funded, which is a plus. And then the last thing is we are compiling information about what different grantees are doing with ARPA funds. And so we do have a link to a spreadsheet that we have that'll be included in the notes. But we're just trying to figure out who's doing what and the timelines, and then differentiating, of course, between the HHS funds through ARPA and the Treasury funds through ARPA. So if you have things going on, we would love to hear about it. And that's all from us at NASCASP. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's wild to think about an in-person conference again, but here's hoping. Bill, why don't you go next? Let me hand over the ball to you so you can share your slide. So Bill Ekman, currently from Oak Ridge National Lab, will provide updates.
Yep, so...
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, since last month, some big things have been going on, and wanted to share them. I think some on this call may have heard about these things, but want to make sure that this gets out to everyone. So, biggest news is the NEAT and MIA calculation engine. The source code for that has been open sourced. So what that means is it's now publicly available, open to be used. I have the links here, and we can share those out then, but it's available through the DOE Office of Science and Technical Information, or OSTI. So some details about that: it is the calculation engine. So what sits behind what people normally see of Weatherization Assistant, the part that takes in all the inputs, runs all the calculations, and gives the energy and savings details back to the database. And so some key things, it's what I would call version 10, in that it is does have fixes and some enhancements that were identified as we were moving things to Weatherization Assistant Online. So it's beyond the version 8.9 that was released before. It does include a number of things that we had put in place, and that some of you have probably seen on the public testing site for Weatherization Assistant. Now, it is the engine, so to keep in mind, it's That's not not all the access database and forms and things like that. It's the engine, so you can actually put any front end, any forms and database in front of it, so long as that it then feeds the required inputs to the engine. What that means is, again, not constrained by any existing user interface, maybe some of the error checks and things like that that were in Weatherization Assistant that maybe kept you from doing some of the inputs as guidance has changed over the years. And if you have, say, an expanded database for equipment like refrigerators or HVAC, you're not limited to what was in the database of version 8.9.05. So it can accept inputs from whatever database or user interface your developer might put in front of it. So that was the really big one, was the public release of that. I do want to share a quick update on the Oak Ridge Weatherization Assistant team as well. We've got a new team leader in Ron Ott. So he's been leading us for the past 2 months. We've got Minnie Mahaltra and myself are still kind of your primary contacts, or I think of as the core team. So if you have questions, technical questions, usage questions, things like that. And then behind us and heading up programming, we've got Paul Simmons with support from Gina Akawi and Omar Aziz. So we've got a number of people on the team working and pushing things forward. We're excited to get this source code out there. And yeah, we're here if you've got any questions going forward using version 8 and as we're pushing forward with other development. So that's it for the update from Oak Ridge.
Thanks, Bill. All right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll go to our next network update. I didn't see Amy English. Are you on the call? Anything from CAP? Okay, I didn't think so. I think she might be out this week. Then in that case, let's go to BPI, and then Derek and Amy from DOE. I'll save you for last. Michelle or John from BPI, I'm not sure which one of you wants to give the update. Looks like Michelle might have had to log off.
And John Jones is not connected to audio. That's why he can't unmute.
Oh. Let's circle back to them. Oh, there you are.
There you are.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. It's got a wicked echo though. Let me see if I can mute.
It's not too much of an echo on our end, so it
okay.
must be at your side.
Okay, so the one update I have is all certified professionals that have HEP certifications coming due in 2021 through March 30th, 22 will be granted an extension. This is a reminder that we sent this out, and the new expiration date will be March 31st, 2022.
I'm sorry, can you say that again real quick, John?
Sure. That we have a new expiration date for all HEP certifications that are coming due between 2021 through March 30th, 2022. That the new expiration date will be March 31st, 2022.
So if you were set to expire March 30th, 2022, you get 1 day.
Yes, but anybody that has an expiration date between now and then is extending until then. Most of them are expiring between now and January 1st, basically.
Okay. Great. And that was it for BPI updates for now?
Yes. Yep.
All right. I saw a note from Allison Moe. Welcome, new person at NREL. I was wondering why I didn't see any familiar names from the NREL crew there. Allison, you said that you have updates for the group?
Yep. Nice to meet everybody. I started with NREL a few months ago. I think Juliana is normally the person who's here, and she was not able to make it today. So just a couple of things that we are working on, and they may be talked about later, but NREL and IREC are continuing to develop a series of online grantee trainings formatted similar to the sub-grantee online trainings. And those are in process. Hopefully they'll start to be released in the spring sometime. Actual dates are a little fuzzy, but hopefully by May or so of next year, those will be available to the network. And then I do have a question, and I don't know the best way to get some feedback on this, but we hopefully you're all familiar with the badges, the installer badges toolkit, which NREL helped put together a few years ago, and we are working on trying to get those updated and see how they're actually being used out in the world. We have data on like who downloads them, but not exactly how they're being used or adapted. So we would love feedback on if anyone on this call has been using that installer badges toolkit and how that has been going. So I don't know, I can put like an email in there if people want to email with their information. I don't know the best way to do that.
I think a multi-pronged approach is probably best, Allison. Why don't you go ahead and put your email in the chat, so for people on the call, they can just reach out to you. And then if you want to send me just a little blurb, I can include it with the notes when I send it out to everybody.
That'd be perfect.
So maybe if they're not on the call, but they see the notes that you're looking for that feedback, then they can reach you that way. And then if you think that we're still missing some people that you would hope to hear back from, we can try something else after
Okay,
that.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Great. Yeah, welcome to the crew. All right, then I didn't see anyone from IREC on the call. If anyone from IREC is here and has updates, just give me a raise your hand or say something.
Yep, this is actually Mary Lawrence from IREC, and last
Oh, hi, Mary.
month,
Sorry,
hi.
I did not recognize your name there. Hello.
Yeah, that's all right. I think we have a couple new people, it seems like, on the call. So Anna Sullivan has officially transitioned, sadly, away from IREC. I miss her already, but am excited to step into her role. So really just the announcement is to get in touch with me and to know that Anna isn't around anymore, but IREC is still here, and we look forward to supporting candidates and applicants to the credentialing program. So that's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was actually just thinking about Anna this morning. I couldn't remember if she was staying till the end of the month or she's already transitioned away. Yeah, you aren't the only one who will miss her.
Yeah.
All right, then. Derek, are you going to be speaking on behalf of DOE?
Yes, yep, I will.
Okay, let me pull up that
thank you.
spreadsheet.
So while Kelly's pulling that up, I have two quick updates before this one. We're actively working through the reviews internally of the update to the quality work plan, as well as health and safety guidance. I know we've touched on this in past presentations, either at NASCAS or BPA conferences that we're working through them. Biggest changes that folks are likely that they're gonna see for health and safety guidance is the inclusion of the precautionary package of measures for radon on all dwellings. This is based upon the BECS report, or the BECS study that was completed over the course of the last year. And for the quality work plan, one of the larger changes that folks are going to see is the inclusion, or better clarifying the opportunity for a mentorship model for quality control inspectors. So we expect that to be released. We're shooting for the end of the calendar year, but I do know it's still under kind of final review with leadership right now. So if it's not by the end of the calendar year, we expect it'll be in early 2022, so that there'll be plenty of time for grantees to review and have ready for the start of program for the upcoming program year. So, all right, thanks, Kelly, for bringing that up. So the next part that I want to announce on behalf of DOE is that we're excited to announce that we're ready to pilot a refrigerator database tool. So kind of behind this is current tools, the Cuba, Cavello, and energy audit tool databases like Neat and Mia and other energy audit tools are dated resources which haven't been updated for many years, or even for those years that are included in the databases. There's often times that refrigerators and or freezers are missing within those databases. So because of this, there was often a significant need to meter newer refrigerators, especially those that are 2011 or newer, and some older ones for energy modeling purposes. So while we agree that metering refrigerators does provide the most accurate energy usage details, obviously there's some caveat there as if the unit's going through an automatic defrost cycle during metering. But from like a streamline and an efficiency standpoint of energy modeling while you're on site, the utilization of a database is often preferred. So we were able to, thanks to the Cuba Cavello, to the tool, we were able to download that database, as well as we were able to connect with the Department of Energy Standards side of things and receive databases from them that has, from what we can tell, looks to be all refrigerators and freezers that were sold in the United States dating back to 1940 until mid-2021. Contained within that is also the usage details. So we put together this database as well as this tool for energy auditors to help them for energy modeling purposes. It does have a calculation built into it that, based on the age of the tool and based on the door seal condition, we use the calculations that are part of Weatherization Assistant that you can apply to it. So when searching, you're able to have a kind of trued up usage for that refrigerator and or freezer based on the age and the door seal condition. What we're looking to do now is between the middle of this month, which is like next week, through the end of February, is we're looking for interested grantees, training centers, sub-grantees that would be willing to pilot this tool. We have reached out to several grantees. I know several of the island grantees and several regular grantees have already expressed interest in piloting this tool, but we also wanted to make training centers aware of this to get this in the hands of the training centers so that we can get it in the hands of energy auditors to pilot. So between mid-December and the end of February, like I said, we want to pilot the tool. By the end of February, we would receive the feedback from those that have piloted the tool. And then in early March, we're looking to incorporate user feedback where applicable. And then in late March, our aim is to release the tool to the greater network via a memorandum, as well as link this tool on the Grantee Manager's Toolkit of the WAP website for optional use by the network. I can kind of walk through this a little bit. As you can see, there's just some simple data points that are required, similar to previous tools like the Cuba Cavello or even in Weatherization Assistant, where you select the door seal condition. You have to select the manufacturer, and then optionally, model number is optional, year is optional, and appliance type is required, and appliance brand is required. So if you have these data points, which most often when you're going to be on site, you'll be able to find the model number and obviously the appliance brand. Once you enter that information in, you can hit search. And then actually, if you want to just go to the output sheet, Kelly. Once it goes through the database, it's going to take those data points that you entered, and it will then display the most similar matches. Obviously, if there's a perfect match, it's going to show that. But if you don't have the full number or you don't have the full information, what it's going to do is provide you as close of matches as possible. So it'll give you the brand, the model, the year, and configuration style, as well as the usage and adjusted usage based on the data inputs. And that's what you would be able to utilize when entering into your energy audit tool. So I know this is really quick, but once we get those interested individuals or organizations, whether it, grantee, sub-grantees, training centers, we'll speak directly with them to kind of walk through in further detail, and the feedback that we're looking for. But if there is organizations on the call today that would like to pilot this, please reach out to me and we can connect so that we can get this in your hands so we can get piloting it and have some user feedback by the end of February. And then other than that, that's really the largest technical updates that I have for DOE right now. Obviously, we're still, working through with the passage of the infrastructure. As Jonathan mentioned, we're on continuing resolution, so we're working through all of those items. So if there's any questions that anybody has, I can try to take those real quick. If not, if you're interested in piloting this, please contact me right away and we'll get connected.
Derek, do you want to put your email in the chat just to make it
I'll do that right now
for everyone? Excellent. And if anyone has any questions for Derek, it's a rare treat to have him live on our calls, so feel free to chime in now. Otherwise, I'll get ready to transition to our main event. I saw Joe. There you go. So Derek put his email in the chat. Contact him about the database, and Derek, I'll include this in the notes also.
I had a catastrophic issue with my PowerPoint, which I'm recovering as fast as possible, but I just need a few minutes. So if you could talk amongst yourself real quick. I know there's several people that may give some feedback briefly before I actually show my slides. So if you want to create a discussion, just give me a minute and I'll be able to present. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's check, Zach, let's check your audio. Zach Marin?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great.
Perfect. And Paul Raymer, I know you haven't been so involved in the email back and forth, but do you want to just check your audio in case you feel like chiming in?
I'm here.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Great.
Okay.
And I know Paul Francisco and Rick couldn't be here, but just to set the stage a little bit while we wait, everyone, what I know normally I use this December call to kind of plan the year ahead, and I think things are in kind of a bit of flux right now, so I didn't feel quite ready to do that this month, although if we have time, we can totally do that, but I'm going to save that for next month. But another issue came up that I thought was really timely, and that was, a lot of people are having to go back to work, go back to the offices. The kids are back in school, but we still are dealing with this ongoing, COVID is its own thing, but the indoor air quality is this kind of bigger, broader issue that we all deal with. And because of COVID, I've been seeing a lot of publicity around these kind of DIY ventilation strategies. I think the very simplest version has been, a box fan with a furnace filter strapped to the back of it, which it's something. And then what we've seen more lately, I don't know if you all are keeping up on this, but I've seen on Twitter and stuff where these groups are coming together and building what they call a Corsi Rosenthal box, which is like a cube, and I'm pretty sure Joe will have pictures of that once the slideshow gets sorted. And it's just kind of a nice low-cost DIY option for ventilation when maybe replacing or upgrading the entire HVAC for, say, a school or an office building isn't really in the cards or in the budget right now. And so I wanted to kind of just have a discussion amongst us, not necessarily that this is something that we would be doing, as a weatherization measure, obviously, but just as something this peer group, I think, is such a good technical group and brings up a lot of topics that we might not come up with if we were considering this on our own. But I'm sure I'm not the only one I'm dealing with friends and colleagues around the country who are really nervous about going back into shared workspaces. Or, you know, Anthony, you had your camera on earlier, and you're obviously back in the office, but you're still having to wear a face covering. So there's clearly some concern about, you know, contagions still and air quality. And I just think whatever we can be doing to help each other get through this in a way where everyone feels safe and comfortable is not a waste of time. So I wanted to talk about some of these kind of DIY ventilation strategies that are out there. And Joe and so you all know Joe Medosh has been all over the network for a while, but in the most recent years, really heavily involved in the Healthy Home Evaluator and just healthy homes in general. And then Zach Marin from is kind of not exactly pinch hitting for Paul. Like, I originally reached out to Paul Francisco from the Illinois Training Center, and he couldn't be here, and he said Zach would be a great option to have to discuss this stuff, and Zach was gracious enough to agree to be here. And we have just a lot of experts to talk about this stuff. So let's see, Dale's asking, how many are using positive pressure ventilation to meet ASHRAE 62.2? Ooh, that's a good question. Thank you, Amanda, for those tips about who Dr. Corsi and Jim Rosenthal are. I couldn't get them on our call, although I didn't ask. Maybe I should have. Maybe next time. While we're waiting for the slides to come up, does anyone have responses to Dale's question about how many, is anyone using positive pressure ventilation to meet ASHRAE 62.2? I know from my time out in the field, I have not seen it, or balanced. I've only ever seen exhaust. If you're muted, feel free to add in the chat, or I can unmute you.
Anthony, yeah, so.
Hey, Anthony.
Not so much in weatherization in our affordable multi-family housing, but sometimes that causes more issues than help, but with moisture. So mainly because the HVAC was, even the smallest units are oversized. But since then we've went to like ducted mini splits, and we have ERVs and a in-wall dehumidifiers on the first floors, and then the other floors have they're roughed in if we need to add in-wall dehumidifiers. But that's on like the multifamily affordable housing, not really the single family stuff that we deal with, you know, a lot as well. So.
Hi, this is Joe. I'm almost done, but I'm going to ask a question that fits into this is, who here knows what their effective air changes per hour are in their office? At home, we're not really discussing that. It's more like if you're going to an environment, whether it's the shop or the office, whatever, we all understand air changes per hour, but it's been multiplied by an exponential number for COVID if you follow some of the experts. The other part is ineffective, like you're adding filtration, which we'll talk about, combined with ventilation. So does anybody have any idea about, are they meeting 6 air changes, 3 air changes per hour, or is it all outside air? Is it effective? So that's my first question, and I'll finish these slides here in just a second.
Back to Dale's question for a second. I just want to remind people that feed to the return side of the air handler is positive pressure. So an air cycler system would be a positive pressure ventilation system.
Yeah, and that's what we had in those affordable housing. It's just a 6-inch duct with the damper. Some of them, well, it wasn't necessarily an air cycler, but it had a Honeywell control or something like that, where it was on a timer, so it would run the fan even if it wasn't any call for heating or cooling, which was part of the problem too, because such a low load on the units, and then people would either have their AC off or whatever, but it would still turn on that air and load up the building with moisture. It was, yeah. there's better ways to do it, but yeah. Hopefully now, I mean, as much as it costs to install a exhaust fan anymore, you think maybe we can move toward doing some more ERVs and more balanced stuff. It's the exhaust fan is like 800 to, I've seen $1,400 for just a regular like ASHRAE fan, so exhaust only. So I don't know, majority that's labor, I'd imagine, but no.
I want to ask Joe if he's looking for the effective air change rate as opposed to the average air change rate.
Yeah, I am actually. Can you explain briefly what that is? And I also want to talk about CADAR. Why don't you explain the concept of CADAR, clean air delivery rate, that goes along with a filtration device that's in a room.
I thought you were going to answer these things, man.
No, I will. And I have examples. I am literally less than 1 minute away from just moving stuff around and be like, okay, let's make this work.
Well, even before we get into the specifics, I know that Amanda had a carbon dioxide story recently. Speaking of indoor air quality, Amanda, you wrote that you're using an AirNet 4 to monitor that.
Oh yeah, so I went to a weatherization day event down south of here and stayed overnight in an old hotel that did not have any bathroom fan ventilation. The window was not an operable window. And I had my little AirNet CO2 monitor, which tells you sort of the amount of fresh air that you're getting in the room, really. And if it gets over 1,000, it means that you're getting into just, anky air. And if it gets over 2,000, then I guess
that's a technical term.
Yeah, that is it. If it gets over 2,000, your cognitive is supposed to like decrease about 50%. And so I woke up in the morning feeling really and it was 2,235. And I sent it to Allison Bales, and he has one of these, and he said it was the highest he's ever seen. Like, of his one has never got that high. And it was just because I was in this little hotel room with no ventilation and the doors closed. So that was my story, and I take it with me, and it's really fun to see. Mostly it's 580 or something when I'm around, but if I'm in a place where it's enclosed and it's getting up over 1,000, I make sure that either their windows are open or I don't stay in there.
That might be, so Paul, you were going to describe for us the difference between effective and actual air changes. Can you use that as like an example? Amanda's story in that hotel room.
Take myself back off mute.
There you are.
The actual air change, or the average air change rate, is if you are running a big fan to exhaust or change the air periodically, instead of having a fan that runs continuously at a low rate. So the effective air change rate would be the same if you ran the fan all the time, as opposed to an average air change rate, which usually comes out to be quite a bit less in effective air change rate. I need my slides to present all that.
I was going to say, so if Amanda's hotel room had had an average air change rate that brought it in the realm of safety, but that average happened during the day and overnight there was essentially 0, she still could have ended up with that level of CO2 in her room?
Yeah, it goes, I mean, it recalibrates every minute. And so as soon as you're in an area, like if I start cooking with a gas oven, it goes way up also because it eats up all the oxygen in the room and you've got more CO2. And so it's really interesting to have because it's a really quick, easy, I don't know how, super scientific it is, but it definitely tells you, the amount of fresh air that is right around where you are.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, I would be cautious about trying to use the word fresh air versus just having high levels of carbon dioxide, and I will be ready to share here just now. So
Yeah.
because
Wow.
you're trying to, you're, as Brett from LBL will be like, you're using it as an indirect concept of fresh air, but the
Yeah.
reality is just you could have a lot of fresh air and be breathing right next to this thing and
Yeah.
find out that you are just having a lot of carbon dioxide right next to you.
Well, I can breathe near it and it still doesn't go really high, so long as I'm like not breathing right on it. As long as it's like 2 feet away, it is always like 500, 600 in a normal environment. And so when it goes up over 1,000, I think, oh, what's going on? And then if it's over 2,000, it's like, okay, probably.
Yeah, 2,000 is pretty high. If you get on an airplane, you're going to see that you would see that your numbers are probably around 1,800 to sometimes 2,400, and that's why we all kind of get drowsy and just want to go ahead and fall asleep.
Huh.
Okay,
That's
so
cool.
I will enter the challenge that everyone else has, that I've always been on the other side is, okay, Kelly, how do I present my stuff? So I'll try and share and
So
see
I
if I can
handed
share
you,
that
yeah,
back.
I handed you presenter privileges. So you
Okay.
should be able to choose from the bottom, share.
Got it.
And then pick if you want to share your whole screen.
Okay.
Oh, here we are.
Hopefully we're there. Okay, great. So of course I didn't start at the
We're at the
beginning.
Evid Elfstrom slide. Okay,
Yes,
here you go, box fans and filters.
So I give credit in a second to who there. So this has been a major fad that's running across a lot of parts of the country, especially California. There's multiple ways to make these box fans with filters. You can call them what you like, but I'll go through some of the details that you would want to know to make them the best or make them as best as they could be. In general, these little box fans, especially this Corsi Rosenthal concept of having a 4-sided, you could even do a 5-sided concept of filters, but they are equivalent to a $600 or $700 really high-end air cleaner. We try to not use the word air purifier because in general, air purification means that you're changing the air. You're doing something to it. Usually it's some kind of ionic, or maybe you've got some UV in the filter or something. So you're spending $500-600. You probably got this electronic stuff that I recommend turning off because in general, it can create a low level of ozone in the room, which there's no reason to have that. You just want to capture stuff and throw it away. So we all kind of understand the concept of thicker the filter, the less resistance, the thicker the filter, the more media. In general, the thicker the filter, the longer it lasts. So some of our applications have 1-inch, 2-inch, and 4-inch. There is a 3-inch, but in general, we're just talking about, clearly you can see the amount of surface area that we're having just on these basic box fans. We'll show both examples, actually 3 different examples kind of as we go here. So all of my slides were corrupted, so I had to throw all these together as the call started. So let's see what we get here. So this is, I'm going to jump to kind of like the extreme part of it. So it's supposed to be David Elfstrom is on here, and he actually does a lot of real studies. He's a COVID-ridden person in his own house, but he recreated lab conditions, and he's able to give studies as to the speeds, the power for some of the fans, what they are, their efficiency, and what their potential KDAR is based upon noise and voltage and a variety of stuff. So he's been a major source for us. If you go onto Twitter, you can find Jim Rosenthal's posts that are just constantly go through these, and all the people that are following it and doing these and building hundreds on a weekend with a bunch of volunteers. So this is the kind of data that he's jumped into. I mean, we all have the concept that if you put a filter on the back of a fan, clearly you're grabbing something and making the air better as to what you're doing it. But can you do it even better than just saying, okay, I got a filter and a fan? That I did a video on it. It's not really well received, but in general, we're just finding the filter, making sure the filter moves air from the back of the filter through the filter, following the arrow, and it's always on the back, not the front, but the back of the fan. It's just basic stuff, okay? Just like you imagine an air handler. We're pulling air through the system, down the return, runs across the filter the correct way, into the fan, and back end to supply air. So I try and recommend a MERV 13. I have a slide that shows that why, but MERV 11 does good. MERV 8 is kind of okay. But MERV 13 is a dramatic percentage of capture efficiency. And they're really not that much more. In fact, you've already gone to somewhere. There are other systems like you can get a FPR 10 or MPR, usually around 1500 or 2200. Those are the other brands. I don't really want to claim MERV, but in general, those are the only two. So it's FPR 10 is equivalent to MERV 13, or MPR I think it's Filtrate. They have one that's 1500 is the minimum. That's around a MERV 11. So above 1500 gets you a really good rating. If other people have different numbers on that, I accept that, and you can throw those in the chat. I think this is the person that we really need to give credit to. Linda Wiggin has been doing this filter fan thing for a long, long time. We now are hypersensitive to how these things work. So I think she's improved some of the way these are assembled. But in general, I mean, man, probably 10 years or so, I think she's been doing this. So she's been a major innovator, and the amount of things she actually does and studies is phenomenal. So if you're not familiar with Raucus, I would be surprised. But you definitely want to make sure you acknowledge what she does. And she has so many groups. So here's a bunch of teens that all did this, on with their filters, and they're all happy about it. And she's actually been able to prove the amount of particle reduction that happens when they put these things into rooms, because they measure it with a Dylos, which does a really good job of keeping track of particulates. On a side note, because I'm remembering it now and I'll forget later, is that this is not for VOCs. This is not do fire, smoke, odors. If you want to do that, then you can either add a carbon filter to anything we talk about today, or just get one that's got carbon in it. But carbon doesn't last as long as that filter. So you're going to find out that the odors may or come back after about 30 days, depending on usage and how strong they are. But for wildfire season, I usually just add a carbon filter, a 1-inch, on the back side of everything we're kind of showing here, just so you can get rid of odors and then swap them out, but keep the main filter behind it, because it'll do a lot. Last month on the 20th, we had about 25 high school students that came over, and we tried to make 150 of them in about 5 hours, and we failed. We got 50 done, which is pretty good. The rest of them got taken to schools and are being used as school projects, because all the people that were part of it were going to use them as a class project to show other people how to do it. And they're being used in grade schools and churches and community centers in mostly Monterey County. So it was, I thought, a major success. We've been focusing on this before COVID hit, but once COVID hit, we're like, hey, we can show you how to do this. So we actually have something on Hayward Score. There's the link on the bottom. I'll send this out as a PDF and make sure all the links are able to be clicked on. So one of the things that's not clear, and nobody really is focused on it, so I want to make sure that we do, if you're going to do these or use these or provide some education, you want to be cautious. And even if you're doing this for HVAC systems, when you're taking that filter out, those particles are easily breathable and they become airborne pretty rapidly. So I highly encourage you to, if you're going to do this kind of fan, take it outside. I have a mask on, which you can't see. If you're doing HVAC and you guys are doing filter changeouts, everybody, not just because of COVID, but you should have a mask on for what could be in that filter, and immediately put it into a plastic bag and then take it through the house. But you're trying to not distribute what you've been capturing for a while in the house, and let it fly throughout the house as you take it from the basement all the way up and outside. So I did this outside, cut off the tape, get rid of the filter, and put a new one on outside. So this is not something you want to be cautious about. So the previous illustrations were all about one fan and one filter. All right, we talked about the flow, and these are very effective. I use these in my house because I don't have the space for these other ones. But we're going to move into what's been the major craze in this concept of we're going to take four or five. I don't use a bottom filter. All right, I just have 4 filters on the side, fan on top. In general, you always are using low speed. All right, you don't need high speed, and maybe if it's in a larger room, you might want to put it on medium. But in general, each one of those changes the efficiency and the efficacy of the filtration in terms of how it's rated as a clean air delivery rate. All right, I have some slides on that too. But so this is the concept. And notice that this is one of David's prototypes. And on the top here, you can see there's lots of different circles, and he tries to figure out what is the maximum flow that I can get out of a fan. All right, and then still block off the corners, because these corners are actually creating a negative flow. So as air flows out of the middle, the corners are actually pulling air back. So you're losing your best fan flow if you don't actually put on a shroud. There are some fans that come with the shroud. Usually they're a little more money, but we really encourage you to make your own shroud and do that. You can see some of the examples on the right. You can see the cardboard tops. So depending on what kind of you have, we use these for was a construction recommendation. So if you're going to have a construction site, we want you to move air through. If you're going to add filtration, the only one I can confirm is the 1-inch MERV 13 is around 160. That's supposed to be KDAR. Sorry. Here's the assembly. All right. Now again, I can give you links to all these. You can. Now this is a different one. The reason that this is different is because they put the fan on the side. Okay. We don't recommend this because we don't recommend blowing air past any one person. Your best is to point it straight up. You've seen lots of those illustrations, and that's because you're getting really good air mixing, all right, as well as getting the effectiveness of the filters. But when you start blowing it sideways, you really are not, you could indirectly send it past one person who sneezes, obviously, to the other person. So just send it straight up is your best. This is just kind of showing the assembly. So ours is moving straight up and the cardboard goes on the bottom. Some people get it off the floor and put another filter on the bottom. So then that'd be 5 filters. These work with 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 or 4 inch. You can see that you got to make some modifications in terms of maybe if you're going to go to 4 inch, you wouldn't get 20 by 20. You'd actually get a 20 by 16 on the sides. The math is pretty straightforward. It's not too challenging to put these together. So, and this kind of gives you a list of what you're after. There's about 2 different manufacturers of box fans, even though they all come under different names. In general, they could move anywhere from 1,400 to 2,400 CFM in general, depending on the kind of fan you have. But we just kind of I send my stuff to David, and he says, "Okay, I know that fan, and I can actually give you some great information." This is a template I made to do the shroud. So it cuts out the opening, and then they cut around the outside so that they can put this on the top. I had somebody the other day just kind of ask me something, so I did a quick drawing trying to show that they had the filter on the back of the fan, but I'm like, oh, you need to put a shroud on the front. And one of the great things about the fan is that it comes with a nice cardboard box, and you can make the shroud and the bottom piece all from the box that the fan comes in. So you can reduce the amount you need to recycle by actually applying it back to the fan. In general, ours was around 15 inches. I think somewhere between 15 or 16 inches, probably as a general rule of thumb, would probably do most fans just fine in terms of the amount of opening you would want to put on there. I don't tape the middle, but I do tape all the edges to make sure there's no leakage. These were the stats that David sent me to confirm that what ours was. So ours was around a KDAR of, I believe, is around 160, 300. So it's a pretty high KDAR for something that costs around $110, maybe $100 depending on where you got your filters. So I can send this out as an attachment. I try to blow some of these up so you can see the size of the shroud, the radius in CFM. He does an amazing job of the details that were in this assessment. So I have his email. You're welcome to email him. Say, hey, Joe said I could email you. I have questions about this. He's a really friendly guy, and we'll gladly want to help you with his time permitting. I showed in the beginning the concept of what is an effective clean air delivery rate. So you may measure the ventilation rate in the room as being like, oh, it's 2, this classroom or this office space, either through a decay method, or you actually can measure by the supply and return, or how much leakage happens in the room. There's a variety of methods, and this concept from Harvard actually shows you how to do that. But this is what happens when you're like, oh, I can't get any more ventilation in the room. And these are a bunch of high-end experts, Shelley Miller and Joseph Allen and a whole bunch of other people all got on board to say, we can actually swap out ventilation in theory for capture efficiency. That if we can actually get a high filtration rate in the room itself, that can actually count for, air changes in the room. So if I'm looking for so many CFM to get my air changes up to 6, that I can replace some of that with actually the KDAR that's listed on the device I'm buying. So if I go out and buy an air purification device, that could be anywhere from around 250 to around 400 is about the highest they go for the level we're reading. So I could say, oh, I got the best one, and it's 400 KDAR, clean air delivery rate. So I can now use 400 as the CFM in theory of what I actually have added to that room. It will, as we talked about a second ago, it will not reduce the carbon dioxide in the room. It's just trying to say that if you're trying to reduce your risk reduction in the room, KDAR additions do 2 things. They add mixing to what you have. It's also grabbing a filtration rate. And there's lots of articles that show these kind of concepts. So if you can't get more air in the room, if you can't open the window that day due to temperature or it's raining or whatever, your only plan B is to try to increase the amount of filtration that's in the room. And you don't want to put it near the walls. You really want to try and figure out, get it near people and point it straight up. You can point it towards the walls or point it away from people. I don't really want to point it on one side of the room and try and blow it across people. So think of our airflow strategy as trying to do something that's effective and not actually causing one system to go to the other. So the Max KDAR at AHM, there's some great sites. I'll make sure those are included. It's around 400 for dust. We usually use dust as the concept. And again, we're using low speed. Here's why you want to be using a MERV 13. Notice that a MERV 11 is only getting around 20% of my low particles here. So 1 and 0.3 are really one of your main focuses. So I'm only getting around 20%. MERV 13 is actually now up to 75%. That's why that filter for the few extra dollars is much more worth it. Jim Rosenthal's got a wealth of information on his website, text air filters, great resources, and he explains why his filters are not the typical filters you may buy in the store. A couple of people asked about, well, isn't there a fire risk with these things? What if they fall over? What if the filter gets damaged? There was a fire risk report evaluation done about DOE filtration, and you'll get the link there. It basically said that, it's, especially for filters being clogged, there's a low risk of fire. And if it falls over, usually they have their own overheat protection that kind of comes into play in terms of being a fire risk. Whether or not you decide to give them out as a program, that's up to you. Linda Wigington gives these out all the time as a concept. This also goes with the difference between a MERV 11 versus a HEPA and standalone units versus actually making your own box fans. And that was it. So.
Can you go back to that slide? Oh.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Sorry, there wasn't time to read everything. Thank you.
So the studies are showing that you want low flow, high efficiency, high filtration, and make sure it's flowing through the fan correctly, sealing off all the sides. I usually put blue tape on my fan so that when I change out the filter, I can just pull off the duct tape and put new stuff on without a bunch of nasty, sticky stuff on the side.
We made one of these for our house, just not related to COVID, but we have a very old, dusty old farmhouse and have noticed a difference in just like the dust levels around. But we used our existing kind of older box fan, and we found that having it pointed up seemed to put a lot of strain on it, like maybe it wasn't designed to run that way. And so after we've had it running a few weeks now, and we have to kind of do some maintenance on the fan motor, I wonder if these have been around long enough for you to have run into anything like that from having them pointed up.
No, we haven't, because most of the fans are brand new, so they are, and most of the fans are 20, worst case $30, depending on the accessibility or the brand. So if you can point it at sideways, like the fan is thinking about it, it should flow its air. Then I encourage people to get it up off the floor some, because all you're doing is trying to grab more of the you're not in your breathing zone. So if you can get it up off the floor somehow, and you want to point it sideways, especially if you're at home, that's not much of an issue. If you're in a public space, then you really want to be cautious about which way does this fan flow.
That was a lot of information in a short time. I'm wondering, I'll go through the chat and see if there are any questions, but Zach or Paul, did you have anything to add while I scroll through the comments here?
Yeah, I got a couple of quick points to add. Mind if I steal the
Please,
screen, Joe?
Go right ahead. How do I get out of here? Stop sharing. Got
Just
it.
Stop
okay.
sharing.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's see. I want to share that screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, the cocoon. Yes.
Yeah, the
oh,
so the EPA did had a competition this year, the Cleaner Indoor Air During Wildfire Challenge, where they asked for some products, then they would, so these are the winners of those products, and there's one that I was just showing. I'll go back to.
One of the things they said in their description is, don't do a box fan with a filter. They actually had that as their description, so I'm interested to see what you have.
I'm just pointing out that this is just sort of another take on it. The filters, especially if you're going with the 4 or 5 filter design with the thicker filters, can get pretty expensive. And so these guys took a different approach to it. I don't know anything about them aside from the 2 slides they showed during the wrap up from this challenge, but they're from Portland State, and what they did is, instead of throwing a bunch of filters at the fan, they took this sort of sock-like bag material. I don't have any specifics about what the material is or how effective it is at filtration, but it's just sort of another approach to the same problem. Obviously, if you're using this, you're having the fan blowing into the sock instead of through the filters. So, and they, they did some tests with it, and it was more effective than nothing. I don't have any way to compare it to the filtered version, but just sort of another little bit of food for thought in this homemade box fan thing. And the other thing I wanted to show, Joe mentioned the UL report where they talked about the fans and the fire safety, and so UL did some tests with the fans. They had various degrees of fouled filters on the fans. They measured all sorts of temperatures, and the highest temperatures they found were, I believe, in the coil windings of the fans, but none of them, they put them through some torture tests, and none of them got to levels of concern. UL is sort of the authority in fire safety, and so if they say it's fine, I'm fine with it. And this was the torture test they did. They sealed off the back of the fan. They put it down so it was blowing on the floor. There's no airflow going over that motor. They ran it for several hours, and it did not get up to a temperature of concern. The one caveat to this is that all of the fans they used were new, and so there was apparently a rule change starting at around 2012 for box fans. There was a new standard UL 507 that they had to comply with. So all of the fans were in compliance with that UL 507, which I believe, I'm not sure. I didn't spend the $5,000 to buy the standard, but I believe it has to do with temperature, over temperature regulation sensors. And so if you have a fan that was produced prior to 2012, you may want to think twice before, setting it up with a box fan situation. But anything past that, you should be pretty safe, assuming you don't run it in your oven or something else.
If you're doing it as a program, I would definitely recommend you're getting a new fan because it's not that expensive, and discouraging them to use their own fan directly from you.
As an excellent point for a program. I'm thinking more sort of general. This is in the DIY sense of this project. I'm sure lots of people saw the posts on Twitter with the fans and said, "Oh, I'm gonna go make one. I've got a fan in the attic from whenever," and that may or may not be safe. There was a lot of let's see if I have any of those open. There was a lot of programs where they sort of informally tested this, and they would always qualify with, do not use the fan while sleeping, and remember to turn it off when you leave the house, because of fire safety stuff. So if you're using a newer, modern, safer fan, if you have it set up in an intelligent way, then with the results from the UL testing, I'm not that worried about the fire safety aspect of it.
That article you have there, it talks about wildfire smoke, but I don't think any of those have charcoal in them. I can tell by just looking at them, but they don't recommend getting one that has charcoal in the filter. That seems
charcoal
surprising.
filter?
Yeah, right. I mean, if you've got wildfire smoke, one's particulates, the other's odor.
Yeah, I think these are all from a health and safety standpoint, not necessarily a comfort and a enjoyable air standpoint. So I think they're mostly trying to filter out the particulates and not the odor.
Zach, can you go back to that slide that showed the dirty filters? It's making me feel a lot better about the cleanliness of my own house.
There you go.
Wow.
Oh, that's what it says. This from at the bottom. It says Kelly Cutchin's house, 2021. Right.
Yeah, I know. No, yeah, I thought ours would get caked with dust so soon because it's this old, it's over 100 years old house with the horsehair plaster, and everything's always so dusty, and it's crazy to see. It looks more like the one on the left, only we got the super thick filters to help with the just more surface area, less resistance. I know that we're past the top of the hour, so I just wanted to, in case anyone hadn't seen it in the chat, I am recording this, so if you have to leave, no worries, but those of you that are willing to stick around, make sure we get all our questions answered. Thank you so much for that, Zach. That is really good. Paul Raymer, oh, I'm not sure if he's still here. Did you have anything else to add to the conversation so far? I think
I am.
Oh, there you are. You are here.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think Dale was pointing out some things about the UL listings and the safety. When you get a fan tested, it's tested for certain positions and heat cutoffs and all that kind of fun stuff. But I think you got it covered.
There was one little detail I wanted to add. Maybe it was covered earlier.
Oh, go ahead.
If you have a household where one person tests positive for COVID, usually the routine is put them in their room and keep them separated from everybody else. But if you have a furnace system with ductwork, your best approach is to seal off the supply and return in that bedroom and have fresh air supply to the return so the whole house is pressurized, and have that person crack their window open a half-inch. That way the house is pressurized and their room is neutral, and any air movement goes from the house to that bedroom and minimizes cross-contamination to other occupants.
Yeah, I could see if there was a return in the room, closing that off, but I don't understand why closing the supply would be, because I'm sure, especially now with the cold temperatures, that would be uncomfortable. Yeah.
The problem is, well, it's twofold. One is to have the heated air come under the door as opposed to up through the register. It's going to be a little cooler, but the issue is that you don't want to pressurize the room. And if you close up the returns, you're not pulling COVID back into the system. You got supply air, and the bedroom could end up actually more pressurized than the house. And
yeah, I agree. Yeah, cracking the window with that or something. Yeah.
So you want to crack the window, but then if you have the heat supply there, then I suppose if it's really cold or extreme temperatures of any sort, then yeah, having some supply air may be useful. But you want to check to make sure the pressure is such that the bedroom is a lower pressure than the rest of the house.
And another issue there with leaving the supply open would be when the HVAC is off, especially if you've got the window cracked. You could have that room getting pressurized from the outside and then distributing its garbage throughout the house.
Yeah, very good point.
We did a small project on this. Paul Francisco's group did a small project on this, where instead of just cracking the window open, we took again box fans. You know, those happen to be the item du jour, and we put box fans in the windows, exhausting from those rooms. And you know, no surprise to anyone, they were very effective at depressurizing the room and sort of isolating that zone from the rest of the house. It works a lot better in the spring and summer than it does in the winter. But you know, that's.
Yep, I just looking at the extreme temperature situation. You probably don't want to have the window open that much. So
yeah,
in the whole house just keeps it higher pressure than that room. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Email me if you got any counter arguments or suggestions for improvement. Great conversation today. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I see that we've gone a little bit past our hour, but unless anyone has any other final thoughts, I'll wrap it up. Let me give you the requisite 11 seconds to speak up.
So I will comment. Dale asked about, once you put these filters on these fans, it does reduce the flow. So all of the ratings that I get are based upon the flow through the filter and the new CFM that it now provides, combined with the filtration that you've placed on it to get the clean air delivery rate. So all of those are all taken into account. The same as the KDAR that you get at AHM, they're actually doing the same stuff. Like, what's the reduction on high, medium? Actually, they only use high. They don't use medium or low. What's the reduction on high with that filter, and combine that with the filtration rate that they have a way of testing that.
So in the tables that you'll include in the PowerPoint when you send it, or PDF, those are measured rates
Those are measured rates with two things.
Okay.
They measure the flow and they also measure the voltage that's happening through that fan. So he does two methods to try to keep track of what's happening. So
Great.
I will comment on that. The AeroNet 4 is a great product. They make a one that does not connect to your Wi-Fi and one that does. If you don't need to capture stuff on your phone, you can probably save $100 and get the AeroNet Basic. But it's huge. We all know IQ monitors. In general, it's not bad. It usually runs a little high, but it's a great thing to determine what if it's changing. That's really what you're after is it changing? And you're right. When you go to some environments, you're shocked how high your carbon dioxide is. I'm done.
Great. I will include that in the notes as well. I will copy and paste that over. All right. Well, is there anything else? Here's your last chance. Then with that, thank you so much. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Dale, for this great conversation. Thanks, everyone, for your questions and contributions. I think this was kind of harkens back to when I first got into the Trainers Consortium and kind of just talking about technical stuff as a group. So really nice kind of harkening back to the early days of this group. I will send around the recording and notes shortly, let's say within the next week or so. And happy holidays to you all too. Thank you in the chat. And yeah, I'll talk to you, oh my gosh, next year. I'll talk to you in 2022. And we will brainstorm what topics we want to cover over the course of the year. So take care, everyone. Be well, be safe, be healthy, stay warm, be good to each other. All right, bye.